everybody, my name's Allison. I'm the Programs Outreach and Youth Services Manager here at Monterey County Free Libraries. Thank you for joining me this week for an episode of STEAM Time. Today we are going to be talking about pine cones. Now, if you haven't already, please go and check out our Perfect Pine Cone episode of Backyard Science, because that gives a little bit more context to this video. But if you haven't checked it out and you're just dying to see this video and can't put pause to go see that one first, I'll give you a small summary of what we covered in that video. Basically, I discovered in that video that pine cones do something really cool when they go through temperature changes. And this experiment that we're going to be doing today is going to show us exactly what happens when a pine cone goes through a particular temperature change. So let's go over what you're going to need to do this experiment at home. You are going to need 2 or 3 pine cones. You're going to want at least 2, and you're going to want ones that are open like this, so that have all of their little scales out like that. I have 3, and if you don't live in an area where there are pine cones, you can go take a trip to somewhere where there are pine cones. In my area here in Pacific Grove, they're just everywhere. They're in my backyard, they're in my front yard, they're everywhere. You are also going to need 3 containers to hold each of your pine cones. So I have mixing bowls today of varying sizes. It doesn't matter what size your container is, as long as your pine cone is going to be able to fit in it and be submerged, because we're going to be putting water over the pine cone. So ideally it'll be something large, a large jar, large bowl, what have you, as long as your pine cone can be submerged in water. Then you are also going to need cold water and hot water. So for my hot water, I'm not going to boil any water. I think that's a little bit overkill, although I am very interested to see what would happen to the pine cone if I did boil water. But I am just going to run the hot water out of my tap. If you're dealing with very, very hot water, make sure that you ask an adult to help you. And we're gonna have one bowl that has cold water, one bowl that has hot water, and then one bowl that just has air. So you'll also need some air. Gather up your materials and meet me back here, and we will get started with our experiment. Okay, I have my 3 bowls set up. This is my air, this is my cold water here, and this is my warm or hot water. Now I did run my hot water on my tap till I saw steam coming up off the top, so again, make sure that you have an adult helping you with the hot water. And we're gonna go ahead and start placing our pine cones in. So I'm gonna take this one and put it in the air, and that will be our control. So this is the one that's gonna stay the same as when we started, and we'll be able to compare the other 2 to our control. I'm going to take this one and put it in the cold water, and I'm gonna take this one and put it in the hot water, and let's see what happens. So the first thing that you might notice is that the pine cones float. So you can see they're not totally on the bottom of the bowl. Now what I should have mentioned before I got really excited and dunked my pine cones in is you'll always want to take a look at what your pine cone looks like beforehand so that you can compare before and after. So we saw them in the start of the video. They were all pretty open and they had all the little spaces in between. So let's take a look and see if we can notice anything happening here with our cold water one. Do you guys notice anything? It looks to me like the spaces between each of these scales is getting a little smaller. On this side, it's starting to really close up. Let's take a look at our hot water one. So this side's not completely submerged. Let's take a look at this side. Kind of closing up a little bit too. So I'm going to let these sit for a little while and maybe run a little bit more water so they're completely submerged, and then we'll come back and see what they look like in, let's say, 5 minutes. I went ahead and put some more water in. I've been waiting for a little bit longer, and what I'm noticing is this one that's in the cool water is really starting to close up on this side. I'm kind of spinning it around to make sure that the whole pine cone gets submerged. So that one's starting to look like it's really closing up. This one in the hot water is also looking like it's starting to close, but not as much as the other one. And of course, our one in air looks exactly the same. So let's wait a little bit longer and we can see what happens. I've been waiting for quite some time now. This is one of those experiments that you kind of leave to sit and check back on it every now and then. And let's take a look. This is our cold water one. So this side again is still getting really closed up, and I noticed that the other side is as well. And then here on our hot, it looks to me like the space in between all of the scales is getting smaller. So this is going to be one of those Steam Time videos where I'm leaving you to do a little bit of your own research. I want you to make a guess on which one closes up faster, the cold water or the hot water. And once you've made your guess or your hypothesis, you can test your hypothesis with your own experiment, and then you can go do some research online or by checking out a book from our catalog and see if your hypothesis was correct. As I explained more in the Backyard Science video, Perfect Pine Cones are the seed holders for their trees. So their job is to protect and disperse the seeds to help make new trees. And so what happens is when the weather is warm, pine cones open up, and this allows their seeds to disperse and to go about their business to make new trees. When the weather is cold and damp, they close up so as to protect the seeds because they know that the weather isn't ideal for planting. The scales on the pine cone move in response to the weather and the humidity, whether it's warm and dry, which would cause them to open up and release their seeds, or cold and damp, which causes them to close up to protect their seeds. And all of this has to do with their cells. When the cells in the pine cone scales start to shrink, this causes the pine cone to open up, and when the cells in the scales expand, that causes the pine cone to close up. So something super cool that you're able to witness with your own eyes. You can either witness it if you live in an area like I do where pine cones are plentiful, you can see it changing as the weather changes, or by doing a simple experiment like this in your house. I hope that you enjoyed this episode of Steam Time, and I will see you again next time. Bye-bye, everyone.